Okay, so now this is the part 2 of our modeling and texturing of the standing fan. So yeah, we are going to start texturing our fan, and then we are going to add lighting to our final scene. So not much ado, let's start. So the first thing we want to do is create a backdrop for our fan. So with the plane selected, let's start into the edit mode, and then number 3 to go to side view, and then shift Z to go to the let's just select everything and extrude upwards to something like this. And then with the top face selected, let's change to the face mode, select this face, and then X to delete the faces. Okay, so we now have this box over here. Select everything and then scale everything on the X axis. We can change this to global. Okay, let's enable the screencast keys. Okay, so tap back into the object mode, and then let's add a bevel modifier. And let's lower the bevel, shade smooth. Then let's add another modifier, the subdivision modifier. Okay, so let's increase it to 2. Then we can add an edge loop here to 30 minutes, and add another edge loop here to 30 like this. Okay, so that's it. So you can move this here so that you smoothing out the edges a bit. Okay, so that's it for our backdrop. So let's come to this shading tab over here, and then start adding materials for our objects. So I'm going to add materials for our object. Okay, so we are now in our material tab. Let's change it to the solid view. So let's divide this interface into 2. Make a hole and then divide, and then we are going to disable all the gizmos over here so that we can see only our models. And then we want to add a camera, so let's add Shift A, then add a camera to the scene, and then let's go to front view, and then hold down the Control key and then the Alt key, and then press number 0 to jump to the scene that you are in already. So we now have our camera scene. So what we want to do is lock this camera view so that we can adjust our camera. Hold down the Shift key and middle mouse to drag it and adjust it. Okay, so something like this is okay. Okay, so we're good. So let's jump out of the camera view with number 0, and then let's come here and then go to our camera view. So we're going to be doing our camera render over here. Then we'll be doing the texturing over here. Okay, so let's change this to render view, and then we want to change our render engine from UV to circles. Okay, and then we don't need all this back rendering. We want only the things inside the camera to render. So hold down Control and then press B, and then hold and drag across the camera to view the rendered part only from the camera view. Okay, so that's it. So before we start the show, we need to add some basic lighting. So what we're going to do is, just for now, you can come here to this drop down arrow and then disable this scene world. Then we are going to have our world lighting coming through our scene. So we see what we are adding over here. Okay, so this, we are going to add a material for our rings. It's a very simple material. So let's come here and then you come to this material tab and then click new to add another material. So with this one, the only thing we are going to do is change this color. Let's just make it a darker color. Okay, and that's all you need. I want to change only the color over here, the base color, and then I'm going to apply it to the rest of the other objects. So let's click to select this and then hold down the shift key to select all the other ones. Select this, excluding only the fan. Select this, and then let's select the object with the material last. So make sure you're selecting the one with the material last, and then hold down your control and then L key. Sorry, hold down shift and L key. Control L. Yes, control L. So hold down your control and L. I want to get this, the drop down, then link materials. So we get that material applied to the rest of the selected objects. Okay, so that's what we want. Okay, so you can rename our material to base, something like base material. Here's the base. You can name it anything you want. Okay, let's decrease the color a bit more. Okay, so yeah, okay, we are good to go. So now let's select the fan and then come to this drop down. We don't need to click this new, so we just come to this drop down and then select the base material. So we will get the same material applied, but we want to make just a little change, some little change to the material. So what we are going to do is come to this base here. You can see the number 7. Let's click on it, and it's going to create an independent material, a different material for only the blade as we want it. So the only thing we are going to change is the roughness. So we are going to make this 0.2. Okay, so that the fan blades can stand out. Yeah, so that it's going to be more shiny. And then we can add more darkness to it, yeah, to make it more black. Okay, so that's all. So that's basically the material we need for the fan. And then for this place, maybe you have a logo, or maybe you have some name or something you want to put here. What you are going to do is, I want to use unwrap and then apply a texture to this face. So come to this space here and then change it to UV editor. Okay, so after you've changed it to UV editor, come here and then tap into the edit mode and then go to your front view, numpad 1 to go to front view, and then click here. Now use your L key to select only this face, only these faces. Go to the front view and then press U and then project from view. So we are going to get this over here. So after you've unwrapped, what you are going to do next is I'm going to create a new material for this space. So let's come to this material tab and then click the plus sign here, and then we are going to create new material. So I want to create a new material. So let's start back into our object mode, and then to add the texture that we want, you just press Shift A and then come to texture and then image texture, and then you open and then navigate to where you have the image that you want to use, for your texturing. So I want to use this. So I have my image. So we can view our image by holding down the control. By holding down the control and then the shift, then click. So this is also an add-on that you have to enable in order to be able to do this. So you go to the edit and then go to preferences, and then in add-ons you just search for node wrangler. So node wrangler, make sure it's enabled. That's when you can use the shift and then the control and then click to view. So you can see in our rendered mode. You can see in our rendered mode there. So let's enable the lighting here. Okay, it seems like we haven't applied the material. We've created the material, but we haven't applied it to our object here. So what you have to do is tap into the edit mode, and then make sure only this side is selected. Use the Alt key to select only this side, and then come and make sure that this material is selected over here, and then click on assign. So let's start to the object mode, and you can see that we now have this new material affecting this side. Okay, so what we want to do is we can go back to the object mode, and then you can change this to texture so that you can still see what you are doing here, and then go back to the edit mode with only that side selected. You can now come to the UV editor and then press A to select everything, and then scale it up to fill our logo inside, and then we can move it on the X and then the Y axis so that we can place it correctly. So scale S up to the end. Okay, so that's how you can add a logo or maybe a name. You want to add a brand, you want to add on the front. So that's how you can do that. So let's go back. Let's change this back to 3D viewport, and then let's come back to this principle, and then hold down the control shift and then click, and then you can now, what we want to do is we don't want to connect it directly, so shift A and then come to color and then add mix color. Okay, so with our mix color, we connect this color from the image texture to the factor. So since it is black and white, it's going to be serving as a grayscale image, so it will work perfectly black and white. And then let's connect this mix color to the base color. So you can see that there's no changes here, but when we change the color of this A, you see we now have our logo showing onto it. So you can change it to any color that you want actually. So it could be blue, it could be red, or any color, but I just want it to be black, so I leave it like this. Okay, so that's basically all the texturing we need to do for our funnel. So now what we need to do next is our backdrop. We need to texture our backdrop. So select your backdrop and then click on new to create a new material. Then we can rename it to backdrop or anything to remember. Okay, and then what we want to do is we are going to use a tile texture. So in order to create a tile texture, shift A and then go to texture, and then let's bring in a break texture. Okay, so you want to view what you are doing, so use the Control Shift and click to view your tile. So let's view it from this side. Okay, this background is a bit distracting, so let's come to this render properties and then come down to the film and then enable the transparency in order to hide it. Okay, so now let's come to this material, and then with this group texture selected, hold down the Ctrl and press T, and then we are going to get our mapping mode. So you are going to be able to do this only if you've enabled your node wrangler. Okay, so here what you want to use is our UV. We want to use our UV texture, our UV coordinates. Now we can see that it's unwrapped, so our textures are warped over here. So what you want to do is we go back to our UV editor and then tap into the edit mode, select everything, and then U, and then we are going to use the smart UV project over here and then unwrap. Okay, so it's actually better, but what you can do is, okay, let's try using the angle based. Okay, so let's use the angle based unwrapping, and then what you are going to do to fix this is we come to this UV here and then let's change it to edge select mode, and then select this edge over here, and then we are going to scale it, S to scale it, and then X to scale it on the X axis, and then 0 to straighten it. And then we are going to select this edge also, then S, and then X, and then 0 to straighten it out. And then we're going to select these two vertices here, and then you can use the period key and then make sure that you are scaling on the individual origins. So with these two edges selected, press S, Y to scale it on the Y, and then 0 to straighten it out. Okay, so the reason why you are doing this is, now you can go back to the face select mode, select this particular face. So after you selected this particular face, you can press A to select all the other faces. So this face will serve as our active face. So you can now come and then U to unwrap, and then you can use follow active squads, and then okay. So as you can see, it's using the straightness or the angle of this face to straighten all the other faces. Okay, so now how it at least is better. So let's come back to our break texture. What you want to do to create a tile is come to this frequency and then reduce it to 1, and then the break rate and the row height has to be the same. So we change this to 0.5, I think, yeah, 0.5, in order to get an equilateral square. Okay, and then you can now scale this to maybe 10 or even 20. Let's reduce it to 15. Okay, and then what you do next is you can now reduce this mortar size to something like 0.003. Okay, yeah, I think it's okay. 0.003 is okay. And then we can change this color to white. Change this one also to white. Okay, so that's all we need. So we now have our base. Let's change the mortar size to something like 0.004. Yeah, I think it's okay. So what we are going to do next is we are going to add another node, shift A, and then come to vector, and then add your bump node, and then let's view the bump node, and then connect it to the height. So you can now see the bump node working as our tile, and then you can now connect this to the normal. And then you can see the effect is creating. The light is too harsh, so you are not going to see it now. So what you want to do next is the roughness. Let's change the roughness. Or before you change the roughness, let's add the lighting first. So this lighting is too harsh, so you can come back here and then enable this scene world. So we now have a dark space. So now let's add our lighting. Let's come back to our 3D viewport so you can see what you're doing. So you can enable our scene world. So let's add our lighting. So the first light we want to add is shift A, go to light, and then add an area lamp. So as you can see it here. So now let's move this lamp. Go to number 3 to go to the side view, and then move this light upwards so you can see what you're doing over here. And then go to the front view and then adjust the lighting. Okay, let's move it here a bit, rotate it, and then go to the numpad 7 for top view and then rotate, face your fan. Okay, so something like this is okay. Okay, so let's change a few settings over here. So you can see that the light is very dim, so we want to change the strength of the light to something like 200. Okay, so it's better. And then you can change the color a bit to something bluish. Okay, so this is better. So you can look at this X value. You can look at this X value and then apply it, or you can just look at these values and then apply. So the next thing I want to do is duplicate this light, shift D, Alt R to undo the rotation, and then we are going to rotate it to face our fan, properly facing. So we are using the 3-point lighting basically. Okay, so we use this lighting, and then we are going to change this color. Let's change it back to white, and then what we want to do here is we come to this side and then click on use notes, and then what we are going to do here is on this color, let's click on this yellow button right here and then use the black body. So you see the black body adds some warm temperature to your lighting, so it gives you some kind of natural feeling. So this is too harsh, so what you can do is you can come to this temperature and then increase the value to something like 4000. So now we're going to reduce the harshness, or let's do 3500. Okay, so that our temperature is not too harsh, so you can see that we are still getting that warm color, but it's not really too harsh. So if you hide this, you can see the difference. Okay, so the last light I'm going to add it. Let's duplicate this one and to add one more. Alt R to undo the rotation, and Alt G to clear the location. So you can move it here behind our fan, then rotate it 90 degree, minus 90 degree to face our wall. So let's make sure it's hitting our wall. Okay, so this is basically the lighting that we need. Okay, so this is basically our lighting that we need. So we can even reduce our wall strength to maybe 0, so that we'll be left with only our lights over here. Okay, so this is basically the lighting that we are going to do. So let's come back to this backdrop. Let's enhance it a bit. So what we can do is we want to change the roughness of our backdrop. So let's come here, shift A, and then add a texture, a noise texture, and then let's view our noise texture. Let's view it over here, and then let's use this object as our vector, okay, to get it accurately. And then we can change this value here to something like 200. Okay, so it's okay. Let's look at the size. I think it's a bit big, so let's change it to something like 400. Okay, I think this is better. Yeah. So shift A, and then let's bring in the color around and then put it next to this. And then what we are going to do is we are going to drag this closer in order to increase the effect, but not too much. Okay, and then we can now connect it to our roughness over here, so that we get a smooth or a shiny background. Okay, so this base color also, you can change the base color. Shift D to duplicate this color around, then connect this texture to it, and then you can reduce the harshness. Okay, and then connect to the base color. Okay, so it's not too harsh on the eyes. Okay, so you can drag this one into it a bit just to reduce the harshness of our color. Okay, so this is better. This is better. Okay, so you now have our phone. So one trick that I want to show you guys is with this lighting over here, we want to add some effects, like for instance a window, a light shining through a window, and it's creating some kind of pattern. That's what we call the global lighting. So I just want to add a bit of that kind of effect in our render. So what we can do is let's select this light over here. Let's select this light and then come to this light properties, and then going to enable this use nodes. So after we click this use nodes, we get this options over here, and then we press shift A and then add in a texture. Let's add in a wave texture. Okay, and then let's connect this wave texture to the color. Okay, and you can use the Ctrl T to bring the mapping node and then change it to object. So as for now, we can't really see the effect. So what we are going to do is we come back to this light properties, and then the spread. I'm going to reduce the spread all the way down to something very low. Okay, so the more we reduce the spread, it's going to harden the effect of the light. So you can see the effect of the light. So you can see that now the light has been shrunk. So what you can do is scale it back up, scale back the light. And you can actually move it a bit, move it this way a bit, rotate. Let's scale it more. Yes. So let's actually reduce the scale of this. Okay, so you can see that as we reduce the scale of our wave texture, you You can see the effects taking place. Okay, so something like 0.5 is okay. Okay, so we can now have something. It's like a light shining through a window or something, and then it's giving this nice effect. It has some kind of feeling in your render, and sometimes it's a very good effect that you can add to enhance your final render. Okay, so I think that's all for our rendering. So maybe we are going to do an animation, so we might do a part 3. So comment and like the video, and then catch you in the next one.